Do 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 ba ba ba. All right, re-rolling live from the wasteland here in the survival pod. This is Freedom Film. What's the topic today? The Supreme Court went and fiddled with the whole thing for Trump to be able to make tariffs. He can still do it. It's just more complicated now, more steps and shitification, basically. And why is this an issue? Well, it's for the wet dream of the Democrats and honestly a lot of rhino Republicans to get rid of these tariffs because God forbid that some of these corporations have to build factories in America. There's a lot of them that want to go back to the old order. Where am I going with this? It's Freedom Phil, like, subscribe. Let's get into it. And hey, turn up the video speed. Why do I always say that? Because, dude, if you're watching videos at regular speed, what are you doing? What are you doing? Yeah, man, when I upload this, you'll be watching at 1.75. Let's get into it. Like, subscribe. So I see a lot of people talking about, you'll see these Democrats doing a little Snoopy victory dance type of thing, happy dance, because the tariffs, we now made it a little more complicated for Trump to do tariffs. Mind you, these are laws that were set in place back in the 1970s. And basically, we have the right to set tariffs. Our president does have this right, but a lot of people say that we should be doing it through, Congress and whatnot and all that crap. But I ought to be honest about this. That would bog it down. A lot of the people in Congress were absolutely against tariffs until they started working for their states. Until these other companies, these other countries started coming over here like Japan, Saudi Arabia. Look at all the investment that this president has got back into this country. And my fear is that how many of these companies have actually broken ground and built the facilities? Because it takes a while to build a factory. How many of these companies, these other countries and companies, have really got established? Because if they make it to where they rescind the tariffs, there's a lot of these companies that are just going to say, well, I guess we're not going to build a factory in America. I guess we're just not going to do that. Like, why would we build an assembly plant in America, which will cost us more, when effectively now we don't have to worry about the tariffs, so we could do it in our own country cheaper, or in some foreign country and then assemble it in our country? You see, it for political PR, let's be honest, it is a better deal for a lot of countries to do it in their own country because it looks good as a business owner to your local people. But they want our market. That's just all there is to it. Like foreign cars, like fancy foreign cars coming from, let's say Europe, Japan, South Korea, they want this market. And by the way, Japan has invested in assembly plants in America, so it's not like a new thing. But the only reason we have a car market, and part of this comes down to, cheapskate and shit built down in Mexico, is the reason that Ford's having so many goddamn issues with their cars. Did you save a few bucks on the engineers? Oh, I wonder how that's working for you. So effectively, some of these countries that are around us, they're looking around and they're like, oh shit, we're actually we're going to lose a lot of money if we don't have access to American markets. That's the only reason that they were being somewhat normal, where they're like, yeah, we'll build a factory in your country so we don't have to pay the tax. Okay, great. Take away the ability for us to tariff, which is what the Supreme Court is trying to do. They say he can still do it, but they have other workarounds around it to do it. And then you got to ask the question, is the Supreme Court a great example of courts that are too political? Let's just not bullshit ourselves. The Supreme Court is the greatest example of political courts. It is if you don't believe voting matters, then understand the Supreme Court. You think, oh, it's the president, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the president is the one choosing who's going to be put in there. And then, of course, you have to get it approved, I think, through the Senate and all that shit. Basically, what I'm getting at with this is that that's why your vote actually matters. And if you have some political hack activist judge, and a lot of the so-called conservative justices aren't. They're not. They're not on board. A lot of these, like, you look at the guy, what was his name? Got falsely accused. He's basically a rhino. He's a fucking rhino. And it's like, well, I don't believe it's right for the blah, blah, blah. Why shouldn't we put tariffs on other countries that are bringing products? Why shouldn't we employ Americans first? You start to look at it and you see it's not just political, it's also a class thing. A lot of these people on the right and the left, the fake ass Republicans, the rhino Republicans, and the crazy authoritarian left, they want to manage the decline of America. They want to manage the decline of America. And they're more than happy to get crap from China. See, there's a lot of these people that are investors. They are world citizens more than they are American citizens. You, me, and a lot of other people. We are citizens of our own country. We don't have somewhere else we can go. Sure, we could probably sell off what we have and move to some, comfortable part of a second world country. Maybe. And by the way, that's part of the reason some of these people that are foreigners that are, en masse coming to my country, which seems like they've been stopped at the border now. I don't have a lot of sympathy for them because you have a lot of places in a lot of countries you could go to. You could actually do the brave thing and fix your own fucking country. It doesn't, if your country is so bad that your answer is walking north into my country and getting on my welfare system, or like Somalian scammers, it seems like every Democrat state, by the way, no shortage of scamming at the tune of not just millions, billions of dollars. And then you add up billions here, billions there, and you think how many roads, how many bridges could have been improved? These people want guys like Trump out because he is stopping this flow of illegal voters, which then allows them to rig the courts, allows them to rig the situation as far as elections. They have illegal voters. Then they have false census data where it's like, oh, we have this many people in our state citizens. Well, what if 20 or 30% of them are fucking someone from another country? There's a reason they're doing all this stuff. They don't want to see a new age conservative victory. And these factories are that victory. And there's another topic I want to talk about another time, and it has to get down to why is it if you're say a bartender and you overserve someone alcohol, you can be charged with part of the crime they did. You could be charged, by the way, thanks to the like. You could be charged, as an accessory to what happened because you overserved them. But yet, when the judges in our country, and this is why the lower courts do matter, when the judges in some city keeps on letting a criminal who's committed, 10, 20, 30 crimes, someone who's mentally insane, out on the streets, and eventually they stab someone to death or shoot somebody or do something stupid, why isn't that judge put on trial? Why isn't that DA put on trial? If you serve too much alcohol, that needs to be a conversation we'll have some other time. You serve too much alcohol as a bartender, you are liable for what these people do. And yet, we treat judges with this hands-off approach. Imagine if you were responsible at a certain point. And that's the thing about it. That's why a lot of these courts become so fucking political. You have people that can go in there and have their political axe to grind. And mind you, I'm not letting the conservatives off. We have some extreme conservative judges. But given the choice between a radical Democrat agenda and what would be, say, as a 90s conservative agenda, I'd take the 90s conservatives. I would. I'd take a laid-back approach, conservative, over this fucking, wokey agenda, flood the entire country with a bunch of illegals. And let's give a bunch of money to other countries. Like, via welfare fraud? By the way, why aren't the judges and the DAs putting the clamp down, the investigators in these blue states, putting a stop to all this welfare fraud? Medical fraud. Like fraud where basically they go out and they have a bunch of medical companies all in the same building, but nobody's getting any medical. They have like senior assistant homes and there's no seniors. They have autism places and there's nobody being treated for autism. I think we really as a country need to have a conversation about our justice system, our judges and all this. Because when you as an average American screw up, you can bet when you go in front of that judge, they're going to try to give you 5 to 15 to 20. Someone robs our country of millions of dollars and the judges are all like, nothing to see here. And it's because, and this is part of the reason I've said before, I know a lot of people are scared of shit of this. I'd rather be judged by a robot, an unthinking, unemotional robot, except for the only problem is someone could program in the leftist agenda or the right-leaning agenda into it. I'd rather be judged by a fucking logical robot like a Vulcan, any day of the week, a Vulcan, over the judges we have now. See, a lot of people don't get why these tariffs are so fucking important. A lot of people just don't get it. See, for instance, what you see going on in Canada right now, where Alberta is looking to succeed, and if Alberta succeeds and becomes part of America, what ends up happening is there's a lot of other provinces up there, like BC, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. Pretty much everything but Ottawa is talking about leaving Canada. Now, it may not be the majority of people right now, but if one of these dominoes falls, there's a lot of others that'll start questioning, because most of their trade goes right into America. And it turns out, just like with Europe, just like with all these other countries, Canada looks around and goes, wait a minute, if you put tariffs on our products, most of our economy is fucking gone. I think our biggest trading partner is either Mexico and then Canada. And China falls like third or fourth. You know? So when you get down to it, we could actually obtain all those provinces up there as additional states without firing one shot. We could also obtain the Northern Territory up there, where eventually that Northern Passage is going to be the future. They're going to make better icebreakers. The earth is warming. We're just going in that direction. That trade route up there is going to be a moneymaker, because it's going to save anywhere from 10 to 15 days off of the current trade route. When the world gets used to having that savings in fuel, all you have to do is say, well, we have an embargo, we have a blockade against this particular country shipping through here, and then their costs go up. That's why it's important to have the Panama Canal as well. The Democrats are afraid as hell of seeing the Trump victory. They don't want to see our country expand. Can you imagine if our country did expand that way? We'd be looking at effectively something that hasn't happened since the founding fathers. I mean, hell, because of the way Europe has been with all their tariffs and all their problems, we slapped them so hard with our tariffs that they basically said, okay, you could build bases in Greenland. It's in NATO's best interest. They basically folded. They fucking folded. Do you think they would have folded under Biden? Shit, Obama didn't even have the common sense to do this shit. Biden and Obama claimed, we care. We care about, the American worker. Do you? John Deere was shipping their business to Mexico. Ford was shipping their business to Mexico. And all it took was a man saying, I'm going to tariff the shit out of these products, for them to go, nope, we'll be good. Yeah, there's a lot of corporate business interests in America that don't like Trump. They liked the old order. And by the way, where do politicians really make their money? Lobbyists, insider trading. What's going on with Trump is bad for most of these politicians, whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats. They like the old order. They don't care if they were managing the decline of America. They don't care if they were managing the slow collapse, the increased prices for houses. And when a lot of people talk about increasing prices in America, ask yourself this: what has done more damage to your American ability to buy a house, a car, or anything? Tariffs or inflation? In your lifetime, let's be honest. Go look at what a dollar was worth in 1960. Go look at a dollar in 1980, and then compare how much that dollar is worth today. Go look at the fact that the same people, like your Democrats and your Republicans, all groomed your children to go to college instead of learning the trades. They basically took a shit on carpenters for years. I got a relative of mine, his kid, they're building a house out in California, out near San Diego. And by the way, fucking permitting nightmare and all that crap that you would expect from SoCal. But God, Gordon Orban, this guy is nice. But because he knows how to do the welding, he knows he's a carpenter at the level that can build practically anything, just like his father. Between his dad and this kid, they are building this whole ass thing for hundreds of thousands of dollars less for this beautiful estate. That is what they are accomplishing. Now imagine for a second that if we hadn't had a bunch of Republicans and Democrats, primarily Democrats, telling your kid, you're going to be a fucking loser if you don't know how to build a house. If we had more houses, we kick out the illegals, and if we had more carpenters today, more plumbers, more electricians, more framers, more guys doing drywall, we had more people doing this, more Americans doing this, you could afford a house today. If not for the government getting in the way, you could afford that house. Now, if housing was more affordable, would you need to make that extra $10,000, $20,000, $30,000? Hell, if you taught people to do retirement by 30, basically you go out there and you live as cheap as possible and you save your money, go to the Midwest, pay cash for an old house, work 1 year, pay cash for a house. I as a trucker can make $80K to $100K a year. And I tell you this, there's a lot of cheap houses all over the Midwest. They don't teach you that shit. They don't. No, they tell you to go to school and go out and waste all this money. That way, when you have to buy that house in the cities where you can't afford to buy it, you'll be working that day for 30 years, if not longer. You'll probably lose that house long before you end up having it paid off. No, inflation and bad educational tactics in this country did more damage than fucking tariffs have done, even close to doing. Tariffs are actually forcing business back into this country. They're forcing lifeblood back into this country. They're forcing tax dollars out of these motherfuckers that have been exploiting us for decades. They're the reason we still have a steel industry right now. They're the reason that there's the higher quality products that are made in America are actually being purchased by Americans. And if they're not purchasing American products, well, at least those products come in and are being tariffed, which brings tax dollars to pay off our debt. If they want access to our markets, no different than paying rent. By the way, tariffs should be viewed no different than paying rent. If you want access to our industry, you either build a factory in our country or you pay the fee. Just like when you got to pay fee for your stall, your rent. You want access to our market, you pay it. You don't want to pay that fee, then keep your products in your country. But the fact is, they need us more than we need them. Canada's a prime example. Europe's a great example. And you look at all the investment that Trump's got out of not South America, but Saudi Arabia or Dubai, whichever country did that huge military investment. Like over the years, it'll be over $1 trillion. Democrats didn't get that. Lazy Republicans didn't get that. They fear Trump because Trump is getting done what they promised for decades and never did. People are waking up. And you know what? That's why they're like, we got to have the Supreme Court take out this ability for you to be able to put a tariff. He could still do it, but they've made it a little bit harder. So that's my thoughts. Freedom Phil, like, subscribe.